Okay, let's take a look at a little bit more of our workspaces. So we covered the workspaces up here. We're in editing, and there's all these different ones related to what you might be doing with your clips. So we have those, and notice that there's these 3 lines right next to the name of editing, which is the one that we're in, and that is actually going to be a panel menu. So if I click it, it's going to allow me to reset to saved layout, save as a new workspace. So if I made changes to how the layout looked, I could save it here as well. Or you can choose edit workspace. Most all of these, such as source clips, they all have these panel menus which give you additional options. So you can look for information there. When you can't see all the panels that are in a particular group, these are chevron arrows. You click that and you can see the rest of them. There is another image in your book that is covering a lot of the panels. So let me see if I can follow along for you. So right now, this is our source, and that reflects whatever clip we have clicked on in our project. Next up is the effects control, and that one would be hidden. You will see stuff in there when you have something chosen in your timeline. So one of your clips has to be selected here for stuff to come up over here. And this gives you some control on position, rotation. If you had an audio clip selected, it would give us volume and so forth. So that's effects control. We have audio clip mixer. You have metadata. And this is just going to be more information about specific clips. So this gives us the name, it gives us the frame rate, where it's starting and where it's stopping. So like if something had been trimmed, you might see differences there versus how long the actual clip is. So that's metadata. All these ones across the top, these are considered your workspaces. Over here is your program monitor, which reflects what you see in your timeline. And of course, I've mentioned this here is our timeline, which has our video sequence that you are editing in it. Over here on the far right, when you play through these clips, you'll see a bar moving. This here is your audio meter, and we'll definitely get more into what levels are good. You just don't want stuff coming all the way to the top, because it's called peaking, and it actually clips off some of the sounds if it gets too hot. Hot is the terminology as far as being too loud. Okay, let's see. So again, this is sequence. This panel is your timeline. All these here are referred to as tracks. So if they have V's with them, those are your video tracks. If they have A with them, they're your audio tracks. This here is your tools panel, and if you hover over each of those tools, you will get a different shortcut. So you can learn what these are. C is very popular for cutting clips. If you're editing right directly in your timeline, you can also edit up here in your source panel as well. And we'll definitely get more into all of that. Let's see. So we've talked about project. This is where your clips would be ingested to. You can browse for media, so that's another way to ingest clips. We can talk more about that later on. Libraries, this might be something that you have with the Creative Cloud. I don't really have anything in here at the moment for mine. You have info, and you have effects. So when I had clicked effects up here and changed my workspace, this here panel appeared over here on the right. However, in this current layout, it's hidden down here with the project panel. And then we got markers. These are really good when you're doing big edits, because if I need to make a note about there's an audio issue, or oh, I need to put a still graphic in, I could put markers over here in the timeline, and that's this little guy here, and those are the colors. History, it should show what we've done, and that's the last one in there. So that should basically cover all the stuff in that picture in your book. Hopefully that helped me pointing all of it out. Let's see, what else do we need to look at? All right, so you kind of saw as I was moving through that, you can customize your workspace. So if I hover over these dark lines, I can scale stuff up and scale stuff down depending on what I need to make as a priority. I believe if you double click, once you have this area selected, if you hit the little squiggle, it's the one key to the left of the number 1 on your keyboard, it will make a certain panel full screen. There should be another way to do it. I thought the double click would work, but it did not. So the little squiggle that is to the left of the number 1 is the button I chose to make that full screen. So sometimes you need to look at a panel a little bit closer up, especially if you're working on a small monitor, so you can expand those out. I can come in here and customize, like you saw, I made my tools all in one row instead of 2 rows. If I need my timeline to be bigger, I can do that. I can also make it wider by making the project panel smaller and then shifting my tools over. That gives me the most space for my timeline. I prefer that versus seeing more of this panel. And again, I would switch this to list view so it took up less space, allowing me to have this timeline to work. But each person works a little bit differently. Use whichever you're comfortable with. Another thing you can do is you can pop a panel out. So if I grab one, and notice how I'm hovering and it's showing different areas. If I click over here and then let go, I've now made a new panel area. So this is one section and that's another section. So these can also float. I believe if I'm dragging it and I'm holding Control, and it might be Command on a Mac, it's actually popping it out, so it's a floating panel. You can of course always put these back to where it was. You just need to make sure you hover in the right spot. But again, you can customize stuff to the way that you like and are most comfortable to work with. All right, you can also, if the panel is popped out, so let me pop that one back out, it's Control and just drag it out. You can resize these panels. So if you needed something bigger, instead of using the little squiggle guy that I talked about, you can just grab and drag it like that. It just depends on what you need it for. So that covers most of that. I'm going to make one last video that should take us to the end of this chapter, and we're going to look at preferences and the keyboard shortcuts.